Welcome to this episode of the Rise of Startups in India, powered by Crayon. Just to set the context for today, my name is Prabhuram. I lead the Industry Intelligence Group at Cyber Media Research. And from our vantage point, we do have a clear view on the startup ecosystem in India. Just to give you one perspective, there has been a 15,400% growth in the number of startups over the last 6 years. In 2016, we had 471 startups. This is as per Ministry of Commerce, Government of India. Today, that number stands at 72,993. And this is a data which is from June or July of this year. But the point that which I want to stress, 15,400% growth. That's a whopping number. And when we look at that, there is the diversity in the startup ecosystem, in the nature of the startups out there, of which, when you look at the broad sectors, there are like 56 broad sectors where they are based. There are around 4,500 which are in emerging tech, and that's a big significant number, startups which are focused on AI, IoT, and whatnot. When we look at it, like the government is definitely the champion when it comes to putting a conducive policy environment together. There are multiple other factors which are bringing together this ecosystem. One is the availability of capital. The other is the entrepreneurial nature of all of these risk takers, the way I would love to call it. So while there are so many reports coming in terms of new startups coming in 2 to 3 per day, and there are startups which are either being unicorn or unicorn. While all of that is great, there are those challenges as well. There are challenges in terms of how do we access capital, how we access the market. What is my real IP here? What should I be focusing on in terms of the problem statement? So all of this we will be discussing, and we have two distinguished speakers with me today. Let me introduce you the panelists. First one up is Sudha Rangarajan. She is Senior Vice President, Strategy and Capital Raise at Yubi. We do have Vikas Bhonsle. He is the CEO at Crayon Software Experts. Vikas, thank you so much again to you as well to provide the view of the technology service providers as such. While Sudha would be more talking from the view of an entrepreneur, from the view of a startup provider as such. Let's dive deep in terms of the challenges, as I mentioned. Like, there's so much to be proud about, but there are some of those elements. It's not easy. There is no single playbook which is applicable for all. My journey could be different from anybody else's. So in that sense, what are the factors, Sudha, which influence the startup scalability? Over to you.
Right. Thanks, Prabhu. So like you rightly pointed out, right? Like there's no one size fits all. It depends upon, the kind of startup we are talking about, the kind of segment it is operating in, the kind of value proposition it is delivering, right? But having said that, there are definitely, certain factors that one needs to consider, right? When we think about scalability of a startup, right? One is, have you definitely achieved product market fit, right? So there are many times, we think that just because there are like 3 paying customers, we have achieved product market fit, right? So we have to kind of see whether you are actually in a place where you are servicing very niche kind of requirements, or are you actually delivering something to a broader market? Because scale as a word is very different from growth, right? When we talk about scalability, we are not talking about growing like 30% per year, 50% per year even, right? Scaling means growing non-linearly, right? That means that you have to be very clear on the constituent that you are servicing, right? And your value proposition to that constituent, and you have to be very crystal clear about what you're delivering to the market. That's one. Second, I would say, we have seen through the course of last year, whilst funding has been an important component of scaling up, right? While even funds were readily available over, let's say, last 24 odd months before the funding winter set in, not all startups were able to scale, right? Primarily because, one, the customer acquisition strategy, right? What is your way to achieve, customer growth, right? That is very, very important for you to consider, right? And how are you going after that customer set, right? Are you going to do a sales-led approach? That means that, you may not be in a position to scale non-linearly versus a marketing-led growth where there is a potential for you to scale non-linearly. Again, if you are a B2B startup, it's difficult for you to only do marketing-based customer acquisition. Whereas if you are actually a consumer-led startup, yes, it is possible to build a brand through marketing and scale, right? So this, the thing to keep in mind is, what segment are you playing in and what is the most effective customer acquisition strategy, right, within that space, and kind of execute it to the T. Right, and then are you actually product led? Right? And this I'm just making a point which is specific to companies which are tech in nature, agri-tech, fintech, right? These kind of companies, if you want to achieve scalability, right, it has to be product led scalability. Otherwise, it's simply not possible, right? If you are just tech washing your business, saying that I am this tech, that tech, but at the back end you have a large operations team which is sitting and doing everything with a facade of a tech, you are never going to scale, right? You will need to kind of keep adding bodies to the room to be in a position to achieve growth. That's not what we are talking about in terms of scalability. That's one. Lastly, obviously, you have to have the right set of teams, right? The team that took you from 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 is not the same team that can deliver 10 to 100, right? You need a different set of folks that have experience in taking a company from 10 to 100, managing that scale of revenue, that scale of a customer base, right? And being able to attract that constituent and being able to retain them, motivating them, and all of that, right? So in my opinion, I think if we are able to do all these four things correctly, I think, at least we would have done majority of, exercise and scaling up rightly.
And very well said, actually. All of what you said, I agree with. From my vantage point, when I look at it, what you referred to, I call it when you say product market fit, I see that it's a challenge for most entrepreneurs. Like, when it comes to fail fast, that's a philosophy we in India don't follow. Right. And I don't think there is a, embarrassment when you fail, actually. You learn so much from your failure and move on to getting the right product fit and the right go-to-market. Because when you begin well, you are able to succeed as you scale up and move forward. So well said. Vikas, if I could come to you, what are those elements that startups should really focus on when they are in the scale-up journey? What are those core pillars of strength that they could draw upon?
I think most of this has already been spoken to by Sudha. I think scalability is actually a function of productivity, right? Where you're essentially growing faster than your cost. So profitability grows, and it eventually looks at things like, how am I becoming more productive? So there are a few pillars that you need to look at. One has been rightly pointed out by both of you, is the market fit. Extremely difficult to achieve because I've had experience of this. To find the right product for the right audience is something that very few companies are able to achieve. But if you're able to achieve that, the one good thing that happens is the entire cost of acquiring a customer goes down and the ability to retain customer goes up. And when you want to scale, this particular aspect of customer retention and customer acquisition is extremely important. So the product fit gives you that, right? I would strongly advocate that as you're looking to scale up from growth to essentially scaling up, you must invest in a customer success or a customer experience kind of thing. Very, very few companies really look into that till much later in their cycle, because it's important to keep listening to your customers. What is the feedback? How can you tweak your product? How can you tweak your sales engine? How can you make the changes which are relevant to the customers? Because we are in a very fast evolving world. So that's something that I will strongly advocate. A product fit also gives you a predictable sales engine. It gives you a pipeline. It gives you a predictable revenue, which is something that investors love, right? So it has massive, cascading effects on your business. The second, obviously, is all about process. We have grown from a small company. I have personal experience. As you start to get success in the marketplace and you talk about technology, your internal processes, if they lag your growth, then there is going to be a severe compromise on the efficiency and the productivity. Simple things like signing purchase orders, onboarding customers, they need to be automated. You need to look at how are your processes scaling along with your business. Otherwise, you are going to find it extremely difficult to maintain the same level of efficiency. Today, we are in a digital world. There is only that much that you can do in physical forums. So completely utilize the digital properties which are out there. even things like Instagram, LinkedIn, digital ways of marketing, webinars. I'll speak about that a little later as well. I think they give you a massive fillip to the business at very, very low cost, right? So your ability to be able to generate more and more also get enhanced. And then, of course, it's all about people. And I have a slightly more different view than Sudha's is coming from personal experiences. I think there is, along with the people, an element of leadership energy and vision. Whether at a point in time, we are in the great resignation phase, that people are not going to stick with you forever, right? But if you are able to drive a vision for the organization and have a set of people aligned to the vision and show the energy and the commitment to stay true to the vision, then that core set of people who stay with you will aid your scaling, because they will buy into your vision, they will buy into your energy, they will buy into what the future will look like. They will buy into this whole thing about wanting to create a legacy. And if you can build that concept of creating a legacy in their people, most often than not, they will stay with you. They will want to work with you because they are hungry for the legacy that they will be able to build, right? And all of these things put together, I think the biggest and the most important thing is money, right? You can always stay afloat with, someone leaving or product tweaks, and you need to do a little bit of R&D. But if money dries up, then it's going to be very, very difficult. So I think you need to have the right kind of actions, the right kind of go-to-market, the right kind of product with the right kind of people, the culture, the vision, so that, your coffers are always on, they're not dry.
And again, the one key takeaway that I have from what Vikas was saying, you should always have your ears on the ground. And what I mean by that, you should be in a listen-in mode all the time, primarily because if you were to look at the last 2 years, we all have been in our own bubbles. For me, this is my world. I am connected to all of my people in my life, professional or personal, through a Zoom or any other platform. So most of the time, I might not have the feedback which I require. So as the economy opens up, for startup entrepreneurs, this is a big point which Vikas made. It's all about how you can be part of knowledge networks. It could be physical, it could be in many cases digital as well. But you should always listen into what customers are saying, what your own employees are saying, and that would give you a much more firmer ground in terms of where you want to go with your product market fit and your go-to-market as such. The other part of what he said, I agree with that also. That's more about like, in today's world, it's more important that you be your own champion. What I mean by that is, while others would take notice of what you're doing, it's important that amidst all of the noise that's out there, we highlight the good work that we are doing, and that would get the market traction the way it's required. That might open up avenues for new feedback as well. So well taken what Vikas you were saying. So Sudha, let me just come to you. We spent some time talking about all of these challenges. Now the question is, how do you navigate them as such? If there are some experiences at your end which you can share, which we can relate to, that would be great.
Yeah, definitely. So today, Prabhu, honestly, there are, in my mind, 3 key challenges when we're, thinking about what startup space when we're trying to scale up. One, Vikas rightly spoke about the great resignation phase, right? The ability to hire good talent today is a bottleneck that each and every quality startup is facing in the country, right? Like, you see people actually getting a 50%, 70%, 80% hike and still not joining you, right? And joining you on the day they were expected in the office, right? So that is the kind of choices that are available to people today, and it is also to do with the fact that globally distributed teams are today acceptable, and Indian workforce known for their quality and are actually getting opportunities to work for startups from very many parts of the world, not just India. So that is one of the reasons. And second, the same fact also results in lower motivation, right? When you have many choices, you don't want to endure the tough journey a startup with you. It's not always going to be a bed of roses, right? It is challenging and people are hungry for legacy, but it is not easy, right? That comes with daily struggle, right? What you need to deliver in a startup, that is not possible without some level of sacrifice, some level of struggle from, your side. So are people prepared for it when there are enough choices available around them, right? So in my mind, hiring, retaining, motivating people, that's the biggest challenge anybody is facing in the industry today. That's one. Second is prioritization from an opportunity perspective, prioritization from an execution perspective, right? Like, again, for many startups, right, be it fintech, be it insurtech, be it tech tech, food tech, the number of choices or number of paths a startup can take today are staggering, right? And at every point in time, different nodes open up to you, and you think that each of them is attractive, right? And you actually try and open many, many fronts at any point in time, right? That is suicidal, right? You think that scale will come because you are actually kind of doing not 5 businesses, but 10 different businesses today, right? That is not scaling, right? That is actually spreading ourselves too thin. Scaling is what you chose, you stick to that, and you kind of, grow non-linearly within your chosen area. So being able to prioritize is very, very important. Being able to allocate resources, make right investments into the areas of your focus is actually problem that startups face today, right? Many startups are spread very thin. Many startups lose their focus. They call this pivot, right? And we keep changing business models, right? You said it right that fail fast, right? But it doesn't mean that you fail every day, right? You have to have some conviction on what you have chosen, and you have to run with it, right? And actually try and see whether what you thought initially is actually how the business is and if there are obviously reasons why the business will not scale or will not succeed, then that pivot is actually reasonable and meaningful. But at the same point in time, running different things is actually not helping anyone, right? That is the second large challenge. And third is, as you start to scale up, right, you have hired more number of people, you have probably onboarded more number of vendors, customers, etc. So decisions have to be data driven. You can't decide on hunch because the cost of unwinding a decision is too high now, right? You are running on a large fixed cost base, right? So you can't afford to make mistakes with its large fixed cost base, which is not bringing in revenue, right? Then it is a recipe for disaster from there, because then you are burning cash month on month, your runways are getting shorter and shorter, and you're becoming more desperate for any quality of business that comes your way. You're not able to kind of hold your bargain, right? When you're sitting across a table from a customer, you're not able to hold your end of pricing, you're not able to hold your end of contractual negotiations, etc. So it is very important for you to kind of make decisions which are data driven, where you have a lower chance of failing and you have higher probability of succeeding, right? No data can give you 100% confidence that decisions are correct, but you should at least have a very clear rationale. And at the point of 0 to 1, you are going more by gut, right? And a little bit of market research, right? That is not going to help now. You have to go by data, you have to go by customer feedback, like Vikas is pointing out, right? These are the only two variables on which your decision should be made. So I think these are today some of the challenges that startups face, right? I mean, there are various ways to negotiate the various ways to navigate each of these challenges, right? And then startups have tried multiple things, right? From starting from referral programs, starting from giving high amount of flexibility for workforce to keep them motivated, starting from giving them a lot of ESOPs at significantly lower than market price, etc., to attract, motivate workforce. That's one, right? Second is where you are actually kind of in terms of data-backed decisions, I see a lot of startups actually investing in good tools, right? Good visualization tools, good analytics tools, etc., so that your entire team is actually seeing the same set of data. They are actually discussing the same set of data, making decisions on the same set of data, etc. It's actually a very, very good culture, right? But in terms of prioritization, I am not very certain that all of us have got it right at this point in time. Because there is no one framework, right? There is no tool that can help you prioritize. It's your conviction, it's what you want to achieve. So I think many startups here actually need work in that area.
And many good points there in terms of like how we could navigate this. The one key point again which you made, there has been a shift in terms of how things were before the pandemic to where we are now. And what I mean by that is, before there was this workplace where we used to go to, and now suddenly it's the people who decide what and where and how they would love to work. So the power is with the employees. That's one thing, and that's where the entire challenge for getting the talent, upskilling the talent, all of that comes in. One key point which is there is it's all about being more empathetic and having the conviction, as you rightly said. But again, conviction plus that nimbleness, and nimbleness in the sense that it's okay to fail. That also comes in. It's okay to change the course. What we saw in the last 2 years is many startups did some pivots to new areas where they saw some opportunities over the short term as such. While that might be a good idea just for that immediate short term, it wouldn't be beneficial if you were to look at it from a long-term horizon perspective as such. So well taken. Vikas, let me bring you into this conversation. What can technology solution providers do to navigate this new environment that we live in, to address all of the challenges that we spoke about?
So I think the challenges are varied and many. And some of this we can help. Some of this, of course, the startups need to take care of on their own. When you really look at people, it's a challenge faced by practically everybody. But when you're really looking at a startup, and when I look at people, there is a significant part of work that can be outsourced to technology providers. Now, what I've always seen is that most startups like to keep the application development work with themselves. But things like infrastructure development, support, all of that can certainly be outsourced. The skill set, the support, the capability, the capacity that is required, and the ability to administer and manage this can be completely outsourced to somebody else. I think it's a no-brainer today that infrastructure, most of the startups do not want to handle. They think it's too much of an overkill to manage. They would love to only keep looking at the tech stack and how they can keep improvising and making it more agile by the day so that it can respond to market faster. So I think a significant part of your work in terms of people relating to technology can be outsourced, reducing the burden of looking at people and so on and so forth. There is this process paradigm that we spoke about, right? Now, depending on what kind of startups you are, there are needs on compliance. If you're a tech startup in healthcare, or you're in pharma, or you're in manufacturing, there are different kinds of compliances that you need to look at. That compliances give rise to different changes in process. So I think one of the areas that technology providers can help is, one, automating some of these processes by using things like RPA, but also giving you very sound advice on how do you keep your process in line with the compliance that is required for your kind of for a tech startup. There is data also, which is very important, because as you start growing, there is so much of data in the system that most often than not, this whole process of managing data, people become very, very complicated. So visualization tools that Sudha spoke about, dashboards that you can bring in, that brings in high levels of efficiency, that helps you drive forward with a lot of purpose and insight, is something that is certainly what service providers can do for you. And then technology, I think, is a vast phenomenon. No, given the need for capital today, I think nobody is wanting to buy infrastructure. Pay as you go is the way to go, whether it is infrastructure, storage, network, whatever else, because it helps you to scale on demand. It helps you to reduce cost. It helps you to have an OpEx-based model. They can also contribute by helping you with licensing models so that you can have a very lean software footprint. There are various technologies that are important here. Going on the cloud is a no-brainer. I need not say that most of the startups are today on the cloud, because it gives you the level of scalability, reliability, and even security that your infrastructure can never have. But look at things like using containers, using microservices for rapid deployment of applications at scale. Because if you look at microservices architecture, as compared to the monolithic ones, they are able to provide you with faster user acceptance tests. They are able to allow you to seamlessly have upgrades, faster go live, easy customization. So there is tremendous amount of work that can happen. In fact, there is a lot of collaboration that is happening with large service providers, global hyperscalers, where they are putting money with service providers that is helping startups get up and running by taking care of all the technology leads, right? So, for example, somebody like us can work with any other hyperscaler, and we have multi-million-dollar programs that we run with them. which are essentially targeted towards scaling of startups and helping them succeed in the market, which includes going to market. Because most startups don't have the vehicle and the apparatus to go and acquire customers, go to market. Most of them are very tech focused. So one of the biggest areas of help that some service provider can do for a startup is providing go to market, providing customers, providing the channels that he can reach to customers not only within the geographies that they are operating, but also open up new avenues and markets for startups. And these are the few things that I can think of top of my head.
And that sounds good. Actually, tech is the backbone for today's startup. There are so many technologies available that startups can leverage and you can scale faster. You did give a good segue into what we're going to talk next. Sudha, if I could bring you into the conversation and talk about the positives that are there in terms of how startups can really go forward with their growth momentum. You did refer to the winter setting in terms of funding and all, but within all of that, like if you were to just look at optimistically at the future, how can startups sustain their growth momentum? Your thoughts?
Right. Pro, I think, despite a lot of talks of funding, but I just want to say that, good startups are continuing to attract capital, right? We are definitely seeing, deal flow, probably not at the same pace, but quality startups are continuing to attract capital for sure. Right, and from sustaining growth standpoint, right? Like in fact, today there are only two metrics which people are looking at when they are actually funding a startup. One is, are you continuing your growth momentum, what you promised the investors? One. Second, are you kind of at least focusing a little bit on profitability now, right? That never used to come into discussions earlier, but there is definitely some level of increased focus on whether companies are taking measures to cut costs, companies are bringing in those kind of efficiencies, and that's where a lot of what Vikas spoke will help companies, right? Basically a lot of non-core activities where you don't have expertise, etc., are actually white elephants if you continue to recruit teams, if you continue to kind of invest in those infrastructure for yourself and so on, right? So from sustaining growth standpoint, right, like three things come to my mind. One, are you in close touch with your paying customers, right? And are you continuing to understand how the value proposition of your product is changing as the markets change, as the macro changes, and as well as the regulatory landscape changes? I am talking particularly from a fintech standpoint, because every single day there is a new regulation, right? And most of them are definitely beneficial for the end consumer, which is what the regulators are constantly worried about. But are you actually kind of anticipating? Are you keeping one step ahead of expected regulatory changes? Are you building your business in an agile and a nimble manner that you can kind of navigate these kind of regulatory curveballs if they come your way, right? So that is one. So second is, if the customers' needs are changing, right, because there is increased competition, they want you to drop pricing, etc., then are you able to add more value than what you did last year, so that you are able to kind of keep your pricing intact while also keeping the customer with you, right? So constantly kind of adding more and more value, especially from an enterprise customer standpoint, if it may or may not be relevant from a consumer focused startups, right? So that is the second. Third is obviously the customer acquisition that remains key, and are you able to kind of use your customer acquisition cost, that is in some sense a sunk cost, and monetize that customer more and more? Basically, are you able to kind of bring him to the table again and again for transactions? Are you able to kind of ensure that he's sticky with you, right? So that you are actually kind of able to deliver higher dollar value on the same customer that you acquired 3 years back, 5 years back, right? That is essentially why SaaS companies were getting priced at the premium that they were getting priced, because that is the fundamental of how a SaaS business is expected to work, right? So these are, from a customer standpoint, these are the three critical things. Keep very close watch on what the customer wants, keep adding more and more value, right? And I mean, obviously keep a watch on competition, keep adding more value than competition where you can, and obviously make your customer sticky, make him make your customer constantly transact with you, engage with you, even if, only from an engagement standpoint, keep them always coming back to your service, not necessarily from only a transaction perspective, right? So that's what I think are critical for you to sustain growth. And second, obviously, from people standpoint, you should be able to retain good people, right? If you have invested in a team at your growth phase, for you to continue growing, obviously, you need to be able to retain people. That, without saying, it becomes probably the most important variable, probably one step ahead of even customer retention. You have to be able to retain people because they are the only ones that are serving customer from your company, right? So be able to retain good people. And lastly, try and, get certain parts of your growth by smart GTM partnerships. Don't try to kind of, do all on your own, right? Because starting everything from zero is not going to be helpful at the scale that you want to grow, right? So if there are people, right, who are probably in adjacent segments who can get into a GTM partnership with you, and obviously you should be ready to share value in that case, right? You can't keep all the value and expect GTM partnerships to work, but try and partner such that both of you are sharing the value that you are jointly creating. Right, that will be one way to kind of grow quickly than being able wanting to do everything on your own. So largely these three things come to my mind. And lastly, monitor the right set of metrics, right? Don't go after vanity metrics, go after the metrics that matter, monitor the metrics that matter, and action based on the metrics that matter. That's the only other point I have.
And those are again multiple points there. And actually, if you were to think of it, like one of the key points which you made there, it's about not taking everything upon yourself. It's about building on the strengths of others as well.
Definitely shoot from somebody else's shoulders, right? And the point I want to make is be ready to share value, right? These partnerships will work only if the other party also sees value in partnering with you. It's not a one-way street, right? So, right, attribute the right set of value creation to them as well as to you, and try and grow together.
And that's something, recently I was, giving an interview as an analyst, and what I saw and what I shared was in line in terms of there was so much media discussion around the winter which is setting in as far as the startup ecosystem goes. I feel that it is more of a balancing now which has come. There is more discipline and more focus that's expected out of startups, and that's the way I say it. It's not about spreading yourself thin, rather it's more about finding your unique selling point and focusing on that and building on the adjacencies as well. As you rightly said, not everything has to be done within a bubble. It's more about taking help where required as such. Vikas, again, you mentioned all of the technologies that are there, which could really help a startup. Talk to me about how a solution provider can facilitate the learning curve as such, when it comes to emerging technologies. How can startups, not all of them are the same, not all would be tech aware and tech advanced, so how can you support them with their tech adoption journey?
It's a very good question because technology is evolving and changing so fast that many people struggle keeping pace with it. But just on a point on value creation, it's just a coincidence. I was with a very traditional property broker in the morning. And the person, just after showing me a couple of properties, said, "What do you think is going to change with people like no broker coming in now? Will the traditional houses survive?" And I said, the one person who continues to give value over a sustained period of time will eventually survive. It doesn't matter who it is. Right. So just on that point, when Sudha was speaking about it, it was just coincident that I had a similar episode in the morning. But again, back to your question, there are various instruments available, right? Because as we work with startups and even tech companies, there is always a need for and hunger and thirst to learn more. Also because, the tech stacks, whatever you're working on needs to keep improvising day by day. You need to get in agile development, you need to get in containers, microservices. Okay, we are talking of no code development now. So many things are happening and not everybody is equipped to deal with it. So there are various instruments, so to say, or programs. One is a one-to-many kind of a webinar that we do. And it happens with a variety of subjects where we have a subject matter expert and we get in a lot of people and we pick up one generic topic and we then kind of give kind of a discourse, so to say, to all of these people. And then, people who are interested, they come back to us and say, okay, fine, you spoke about containers or you spoke about whatever else, we would want to, double dive on this and let you know now. So that could be clearly one. The second could be workshops. And increasingly, and because I work in this environment, we've seen a lot of importance and focus being given for workshops. Workshops on backup NDR, workshop on database management, workshop on infrastructure optimization, and so on and so forth, which are very, very key and relevant subjects today. We do a one-to-one kind of workshop with customers, startups, depending on any subject. Security, for example. They are very, very big. These are very big and topical things that are happening in the technology world, not necessarily only with startups, where our experts spend 2 hours, 3 hours, half a day with them talking through various technologies and what's really happening with that. So that could be two. The third is pilots, right? Now, people will come and say, okay, so you want me to do something on DevOps, or you want me to do something on containers, or you want to do something on OpenShift or whatever, or you want to do automation to Terraforms. I don't have the expertise. What can you do? I think one of the most potent weapons that a service provider can help with is actually showing you how it all works, taking in all the efforts to take a test environment, build the environment as a POC, run it for you, demonstrate success with a small environment, and then scale it up to a large environment. So there is tremendous amount of focus that is happening today with what we call POCs today, with what we call pilots today for any kind of technologies that startups would want to do. And this is something that I have been thinking for quite some time, and I'll be very happy to partner with anybody who wants to do it. Is BOT, which is build, operate, and eventually transfer. So building it and operating it is something that we know very well, and it's something that most startups will not want to do. So building it up or branch up from any platform that you want to build it up from, operate it for you over a period of time, for maybe 2 years, 3 years. Are you tech, non-tech, vertical? What is the tech stack? Does it have orchestration? Does it have automation? Is it on a containerized platform? Is it built to work in a multi-cloud environment? So many things, right? And I think these are some of the ways which we can help.
And again, the avenues to learning are so many and so wide as such, as you rightly said, it could be one-on-one, it could be online courses, it could be events as such, which you could attend, small or large. It's all about learning from others as we move forward.
And the beauty of this, Prabhu, is that in today's world, the end customer does not have to pay for it. That's the beauty of it. Yeah. There is so much money that is put in by the providers itself, the cloud providers and the technology providers, that they're enabling people like us to go to, somebody like a Sudha and say, you don't worry, we will do this for you. You tell me what you want and what's the challenge. And so the world is changing completely. And it's just about finding the right provider, knowing what you exactly want to do, having the right competency from the service provider and everything. It's like, it just works.
And that's something I believe in also, like the world that we used to know is no longer there. It's all about experience, all about building partnerships. And
absolutely.
There's nothing which can stop anyone from attaining success as such, unless it's a mindset which is there. Otherwise, all the ingredients which are there for success are out there. It's all about connecting the dots and navigating that uncertain path to success as such. I think that's all the time that we have today. Sudha and Vikas, it's been really great talking to both of you. We covered a lot of ground over the last 30 minutes or so. Really appreciate all your inputs and perspectives. It's been great having you. And that concludes another episode of The Rise of Startups in India, powered by Crayon. Do write into us, do connect with us on social. We would be more than happy to talk more. All three of us, or who are there on the screen, we would be more than happy to talk to you and share our perspectives if you still have some queries or concerns. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Sudha.
Thank you, Prabhu. And thank you, Vikas. It was a great conversation.